Welcome to Your Authentic Path to Powerful Leadership with Marsha Clark, where we believe there's a better way to be a woman today. With research tools, books, and our own personal experiences, join us on this journey to your authentic power for our communities, our organizations, and our lives. And today, Marsha, we have another very special guest.
Yes, all of our guests are special, and today's no exception in regards to that.
So today's guest, I'm going to say the topic.
Okay,
Today's guest is all about women's friendship rules and things you didn't know. So this ought to be very interesting, but I'm going to let you introduce our special guest.
Absolutely. Welcome to our listeners and viewers, and welcome Dr. Ann Litwin. So when as you know, we're very intentional about what we're covering in our podcast, who we're inviting, and no podcast that I do would be complete without having Ann be a part of that process and the show and the content. Mm-hmm. So Ann and I have known each other a long time, and she's been a part of our Power of Self program even before it was a program, in helping us define some of the curriculum and content that we offer. And she's been one of our coaches for 22 years throughout that entire time. And I will tell you that Ann has been a role model for me, and really all that the work that she has done has been an inspiration for me to do this work as well. So we can't wait to talk more about women's friendship rules and other things you didn't know, because we hope there's going to be some new insights and new possibilities for you in this. So welcome, Ann. Thank you very much for being here.
So, Marsha, in the past, you've shared all of the due diligence and the research that you did in starting the Power of Self program. Let's talk, Ann, about how you got introduced to Marsha and how you became a part of the program.
Well, I met you before there was a program.
That's right.
When you came to your master's program at American University, and I was one of your professors.
Yes, you were.
And we had a chance to talk there about just to get to know each other a little bit, and discovered a sort of mutual passion for supporting women and for women's leadership. And so that's where we met. And that was really the beginning of us finding ways to collaborate.
Well, and with Ann as my professor, I had led diversity efforts and championed diversity efforts in my corporate life, and I was still in the corporate world when I went through the program at the beginning. And Ann introduced a lens of diversity that, using some of Barry Oshry's work, right, around tops, middles, and bottoms. So thinking about the dynamics of what does it mean to be a top, a middle, or a bottom within any one of the diversity categories. So we talked about it in terms of gender, race, age, sexual orientation, all kinds of things. And so it, like, the light bulbs went off, which is, when I know there's something to it all. And so loved what I learned and how I could bring that back to my organization at the time. And then not long after I left EDS, I went to something called the Power Lab, and we've got a whole podcast on that. Well, lo and behold, Ann is one of the coaches in the Power Lab.
Oh, wow.
And so then we decide we're going through the process of trying to figure out who our coaches are going to be for the program. And we invited Ann to apply, because we took applications to try and pick the very best. And so, it's meant to be when she just keeps showing up in my life.
That person who just is there.
That's right. Everywhere I turn. I think we're supposed to do something together. So that's how it all began.
Right?
Yes.
So,
many layers.
And what attracted you to Marsha's programs?
Well, I could see that Marsha had passion, and a passion for women, which has really always been I always say, my heart work.
Right.
And also I could see that when Marsha decided that she was going to do women's leadership development, that she was going to go all in, and so it was going to be a really high quality program. And so I thought that was, very exciting, and I felt very drawn to being able to be part of it. It was really she was just so intentional and focused and purposeful about developing it and doing the best, most cutting edge work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about, if we were going to do it, you had to be willing to take risk, and you had to be willing to do deep work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what you've done in all the programs that you've done as well. And so that, I think, too, is a part of what connected us at a heart level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I love how you both epitomize Marsha's tagline of "Here's to women supporting women." So even to the point where, Anne, you flew in for this. For those of you who are listening on audio, we're also doing this episode as a video, and Anne is here in studio, and you flew in for this. So, I mean, why was it so important for the both of you that Anne is here?
Well, I will tell you, the Anne is so diligent about the research that she does. She's going to tell you a little later about a blog, and she her PhD is in supporting women. I mean, now, how many women do you know where it's more than just women's studies or women's history or whatever? And so this idea of her work is solid. It is grounded in research as well as the lived experience of being a woman. And you and I are from a similar generation. And there was a lot of work that we thought needed to be done.
Yes.
Right. And so this idea of research-based and serious about the work. And so it wasn't just a passing fancy, or it wasn't just the flavor of the day or that kind of work. It was something we knew was very purposeful in our lives.
Right.
And every time I would be in the process of developing something having to do with my research, some angle, something new, I would say to Marsha, I've got this idea about something that may be important around women's leadership, but I'm not sure. Can I try it out in your program? And she'd say, yes.
Absolutely. Yes to it all.
That's right. Yes, anything. I said, well, don't you want to know more about it first? No. She said, just come and do it. Right?
Well, and that speaks to the trust that I had and the confidence in both your intention and the competence of your work. And so, I mean, it was really clear to me. I didn't have to vet your work in any way. And we learned a lot through those processes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We all did.
Yes.
So much of your work, Anne, I know, and I'm going to start calling you Dr. Anne now. Dr. Anne has so much of your work is around women and dynamics and relationships in organizations. What started that passion for you?
Well, I think I've always been a feminist. Which means that it's always been important to me to improve women's lives. And so I think that's a starting place that goes way back for me. I, though, had a particular interest in women in organizations because that is where it seemed to me that we were struggling.
Right.
And we were struggling in lots of different arenas in our lives, but I got particularly interested in women in organizations and what were the barriers for women. And I wanted to see if I could help understand some of that. Of course, it fed right into women's leadership development. You have to understand what's going on. And so I think, those are all sources of my interest. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got a story here in my notes about a coaching session that you had with a female client who was a successful sales manager. Okay, tell us that story.
So this was really the spark for my research, my dissertation research. So this is a woman, a coaching client. She came to a coaching session and she was just outraged. She was upset. She was complaining bitterly to me about an experience that she just had with a woman customer.
Okay.
And what she said was, this customer, who's been my customer for a long time, I just found out that she's decided to change vendors and she's no longer working with either me or my company. And the worst part, she says, is that I had to find out about it from someone else. And then she says to me, you got to get the whole bite. Who does she think she is? I thought she was my friend, she says. And then she said, I would have expected this from a man, but not from a woman. And I thought, really, this is just business, right? And then I realized, no, what's interesting here is this expectation of personal loyalty from women, but not from men.
Right.
And that was the spark, right? I thought, there's something really here that maybe if I could understand this, because I was looking for what was my dissertation research going to be on exactly. And it was going to be on women and women in organizations, but this was the spark. And I thought, there's something here. If I could figure out what's going on here, maybe I could come up with something useful for women in terms of being able to support each other in organizations.
And I just want to tell a story. So, I've heard variations of that story many times, as you have. And my 4-year-old granddaughter came into the house one day when I was over at their house, and she had been playing with a little girl down the street, and she came home kind of stomping her feet and doing that. And she's not my friend. And here it is at 4 years old. If you and I can't agree on something, or I think you're being disloyal to me, or you're not doing what I want you to do, you can't be my friend.
Right.
Because it is friendship and loyalty and sameness, right? We have to be of like mind about everything versus it is just business. And I mean, I think that's a huge part of this. It starts so early, and here we are. She was 4, we could be 40 or 54 or whatever, and it's still present.
It's still present, and it's getting in our way.
Yeah.
So that was one of the kind of the themes or the threads that started to come out of the research, was that one of the ways in which women were sort of facing a barrier in organizations was in their relationships with each other. We had enough problems with the biases built into the systems all around us in organizations, but that one of the barriers that we had was this confusion about what to expect from the other women in the workplace. And so in some ways we were getting in our own way.
Yeah.
And that was really upsetting to me, because I felt like, well, we have enough to deal with without having to worry about who can I trust and who can I get along with. Right.
Well, and you remind me of a story in the second Power of Self class that we ever did. There was a female engineer, and there weren't many engineers, and she was working in the aerodynamics industry. And come to find it, she walked into the room the very first day, and it's full of women, right? And we're not, back in those days, it was even more rare that it be a room full of women, right? Because we were usually one of only a few. And she walked into the room, and her first statement was, way too much estrogen. Right? And come to find out, she had 5 sisters. And, she
had an expectation.
She had an expectation, and things weren't always good with those 5 other sisters, which is why she almost preferred working with men, because it was easier for her. And so that is so real.
Right. We heard that a lot, I think, in the beginnings of the Power of Self programs with women coming in, because I often was at that first session, and often women coming in and saying, I'm not comfortable in a room full of women, This is not my typical experience, and I don't know if I like it.
And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to engage in this way.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a baby shower. I don't know. I don't know what the because there are rules of expectations about different scenarios. So, so through this research, it ultimately became the basis of your book, New Rules for Women. And didn't women's friendship rules emerge from this book as well? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, now that turns out to be very important. And this was a finding in the research that was really a big surprise to me. And another one of your granddaughters is a historian part of this too. But so one of the themes that came up out of the research, so I did this dissertation research, and actually there were Power Self women who participated in the research as well. But one of the things that came up was this theme. It was like it crossed a lot of the other findings. I called it like a macro theme or an umbrella theme, because it just kept showing up in different ways as an important influence. So we called it friendship rules. And what that is that I call it friendship rules, or relational expectations. So what it is expectations that we begin to develop very young. That's what you were talking about with your granddaughter, about who is a friend and what is a friend. We start to develop those very young. And I think it was your oldest grandchild who, when I was at your house at one point preparing for delivering one of the parts of the program, she was there and we were playing. I think we were playing grocery store.
Okay.
And she said to me, and it's already started doing the research, so I was thinking about all these things. And she said to me, "Are you my friend?" And I thought, well, there it is, right? She was 4. And so it starts very young, trying to figure out what is a friend, what is friendship. But but it continues. I know when, girls in middle school, there's almost nothing else they think about, right? Is
Right.
what does it mean to be popular? How do I get invited to the parties? Why wasn't I, so it's very central at that point in life. And then I think as we get older, I know as we get older, other research shows us that when we get to be adults, we're still carrying those rules or expectations about how to know when someone is someone I can trust or someone I can be friends with. We're still carrying those into adulthood, but they're totally unconscious by the time we're adults.
Right.
Thinking about nothing else as middle school, but by the time we're adults. But I think we still have all of those expectations that we've been developing since 4, but they've internalized and they become, I think, a filter through which we interpret our interactions with other women. And my particular interest is in the workplace, right? So I'm thinking about the workplace and then how does this show up there? And so one of the things I think that's happening that refers back to that original story of the woman who says, I thought she was my friend, is that we were carrying these friendship rules in, and I'll share a few of them, in a little bit, but and of course, I did a multinational study, so I had women in different countries participate in the study because one of the things I was interested in is, do women have the same where are the commonalities and differences in the expectations that women are carrying? But I think we carry them into the workplace. And one of the things about women's friendship expectations, which is very well established in the literature before I started doing mine, is that they're very flat structured. So they're very egalitarian, right?
We're all in this together.
All in this together, and I'm not better than you. And this old thing, I got it on sale, right? So I'm not better than you, right? So it's that flattening, the egalitarian friendship rules. That I think what's happening is we're carrying them unconsciously into the hierarchical workplace.
Right.
Where the rules are based on men's friendship rules, because men have them too, but we're socialized differently. So men have very hierarchical, status-oriented, transactional kind of rules that most organizational cultures have been built upon. And we carry these flat structured rules into the hierarchical workplace. And then I think women get very confused about what to expect from each other. Because we can do this very well. We can be bosses and we can get paid more. And
we've had to learn.
We've had to learn, and that's what you have to do to be
right.
considered leadership material, right? To get promoted.
Many organizations, that's right.
We can do it. But then I think the other women get very confused about what to expect from us.
Yes.
And so when we don't behave like this,
that's right.
It's all unconscious, right? So I don't think, mostly people can't say what it is. They just say, well, I don't know what it is about her, but I don't trust
like
her.
Yeah.
I don't like
her.
her. Right. And so I think that these expectations get, evolve that way. And then that's, I think, setting us up. And so that's one of the ways in which in organizations, I think organizational cultures are contributing to women sort of having a difficult time working with each other sometimes, trusting each other, supporting each other's leadership.
Because we're almost having to do a 180 on what has been ingrained
Yes.
as our interpersonal relationship style.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I read a whole piece in the book about what the rules we learn on the playground from the games we play as children are the rules we take into the workplace, because work is the adult form of play.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And that's a part of that 180 piece that we have
Right.
to flip the switch totally. And we weren't even able to talk about it or describe it at those. Like you say, it was just it was there. We couldn't name it, and therefore we couldn't work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the actual friendship rules?
Well, so this is really, so I have a few here. They're what we call the most common ones.
Okay.
And they just kept surfacing in the interviews and in the groups that I ran to collect the data, and also they showed up in other people's research as well. So they're not the only ones, and there certainly are cultural differences, but there are some very common ones, and they have some interesting things about them.
Right.
So I'll read a few.
Okay.
So here's one: show unswerving loyalty and trustworthiness. Another one is give unconditional acceptance while seldom disapproving. Now that's a little hard to do in the workplace, right? Where you have to be the boss or you have to be team members. Another one is keep confidences. And then there's another one that says share gossip and air problems.
Okay, that's not confusing.
So you start to see here, right?
Right.
The some sources of confusion around these expectations, and then you put this in the context of the workplace where we have to work on teams together, and we're supposed to disagree to find the best solutions, right?
Right.
But if you disagree with me, I feel like
You're not my friend.
Right.
I can't trust you.
Right.
That's right.
That's
Right.
right.
That's exactly right.
And the women in my study said that over and over again. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So, but then there's a last one, which I think is particularly important, which is the last friendship rule on this list of very common ones is we can't discuss our friendship rules.
It's like Fight Club.
Yes.
Sorry, that's for my husband to know that I know Fight Club. We don't discuss Fight
Don't talk
Club.
to Fight Club.
We don't
Right.
discuss friendship rules either. Okay.
It's kind of taboo. Now, I think this is more true for like white Western women because there are cultural differences in here in lots of different ways. But this one, I think, is there are cultural differences. For African American women, and I can think of it in particular, if you are not direct about what's wrong, then if you can't say you did this and it hurt my feelings or it pissed me off or whatever it is, you can't, you're not trustworthy.
Right.
So to a black woman, they see white women as very hard to trust because we have this friendship rule that says, I don't say anything if I'm upset about something that you did.
Right.
And I see it over and over again. I know it's true in me. It's hard for me to say, there's something I need to talk about. And in my in coaching with my coaching clients, they come, it often happens, they'll come and they'll talk about a problem they're having, a tension with someone at work, a woman at work, and they'll say, she did this and I don't trust her anymore. I said, did you talk to her about it?
Right.
Oh,
The answer is
always no.
99% of the time, no. Right.
You're right.
And it just feels like there's a taboo, you say, well, why not? Well, I just, see the point. Well, there's always an excuse, but I think this taboo is working. So that also makes it very hard then for us to keep our relationships clean.
Right.
So
Right.
that's your.
I remember I had a dear friend, and you know her as well. She was one of our coaches, and we worked together for many years. And all of a sudden, we went from being peers to me being her boss.
Uh-huh.
And that to me is one of the hardest transitions for women who are
Yes.
professional colleagues. And we do develop a lot of friendships because we spend so many hours at work.
Right. Right.
And so I remember, and I didn't know your work. I didn't even know you at the time. And I wasn't doing this kind of work. I was doing leadership work, but not women's leadership work.
Right.
But I remember having a conversation because we did family vacations and everything together. And I just said, we have to recontract, me being my professional executive self.
Yes.
We have to recontract for our working relationship and our personal relationship.
Right.
And it was a wise thing for us to do, and it was clumsy and awkward, and we got it wrong as much as we got it right initially because but even being able to have that conversation about it was helpful because then we could call each other on it without it being offensive. Remember because we were reestablishing our expectations around some of this kind
And
of
you
stuff.
put a name on it.
Did.
And so it was something that you could both work on.
We
and
could.
with
We
the
could recognize
yes.
it, understand it, and then manage
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right.
That is very wise because for the most part, in my both experience as a coach and also in the research, women don't know how to do that.
Right.
It's a skill
It is a
that we
skill.
don't have, and we don't learn it because mostly in our socialization, particularly in the white Western socialization, we can't talk, we don't have
Right.
any practice.
Right.
We're
Right.
talking about we need to renegotiate this.
Well, and it goes back to we're afraid we're going to damage the relationship.
Yes.
Whereas in other cultures, including African American women, it's the exact opposite.
It makes it
Yes.
stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite leadership phrases is knowing what tool to use when. When do I
Yeah.
need to be direct and when do I need to be not so direct and maybe indirect or whatever it may be. But that's an important distinction we have to learn as good leaders.
Right.
Yes, which is one of the skills I know you taught in Power of Self.
It is.
Yeah.
So, small shameless plug for Marsha's book, Embracing Your Power. The entire list of friendship rules is in the book. Anne is cited. We're all good. So, and I know, Dr. Anne, I know that with your research, you've uncovered a number of other findings. So, talk to us about those.
Yeah. So, I know you talk about women in competition. I know you
Right.
talk about talking to each other behind each other's backs and that sort of thing.
Well, let me talk about competition first, and then I'll talk about the other one, which is juicier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Juicy. But competition. So one of the things that came out of the research was, because I asked the women as I was collecting the research, I ran small groups and asked them to do role plays and to demonstrate some sort of typical interactions between women in the workplace. That was the instruction, very neutral. And this whole thing about competition came up often, right? And so when I did follow-up interviews, I said, so tell me about competition, women in competition. And I've always asked neutral questions. That's the idea of research, right? Not to lead anybody anywhere. So tell me about women in competition. It came up, in your role plays. And they'd say, oh, competition, women are competitive. It's just, I'd say, well, why do you think that is? And they'd say, it's just the way women are, which, hurts me in my heart.
I know.
Because I love women. Right. It's
Right.
And I felt like it got very clear as I was kind of digging and probing and doing the data collection that when I would say, well, tell me how it shows up. Well, tell me what you see. Is that it's really, it's not about the way women are. It's structural. It's the way we are set up against each other in these hierarchical structures.
One up, one down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and as one of my research participants put it so well, she said, when you're in an organization, you see women as your competition, not men, because, and this is a direct quote, there are limited spaces for us at the top.
Exactly.
And so they're only going to let so many of us in. So see your competition as the other women.
I won't talk about it out loud, but boy, am I working it.
Yeah.
Are you?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're hearing. I mean, because there's one chair at the table and I want it.
I want
But
it.
I can't be too ambitious because then I get described as a too ambitious woman.
Yes.
And all those kinds of things.
Yes. That's right. So we can't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. And so then we are set up against each other. So it's another way in which the organizational structure set us up to not be able to support each other. And then some really bad blood can get developed in the process of competition. But it's not the way women are. I say it's structural. It's the way the system set us up against each other.
And I want to offer something. So we've talked about the Texas Women's Foundation and Rosalind Dawson-Thompson, who's the CEO there. And she learned this from somebody else, and I wish I could remember who that was. So, but I do want to give credit. And I don't know if I've talked with you about this. She said, when you get a seat at the table, scoot over, pull up another chair, and invite another woman in. Isn't that awesome?
That's perfect. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the antithesis of what has been our truth and our reality for so many years.
Yeah. Pull up another chair and invite another woman in. Yeah.
Well, and that sends such a powerful message also. I mean, not only the action itself, but it sends a message to other women in the room of, hey, I should do that too.
Right.
And then it becomes a force. It's not just this one woman pulling up one chair. It becomes a force of women pulling up chairs.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll fast forward for a minute because the third book that I'm writing is Enriching Your Power.
Yes.
A woman's opportunity to lift others up.
Right.
And that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's pull up another chair, whether it's mentor, coach, sponsor, advocate on behalf, make sure there's enough seats at the table and that, those decisions are getting made with our valued input.
And imagine if junior women could see senior women acting this way toward each other, which they do not see
as much today.
No,
we've got more opportunity.
Yes, and that would be a wonderful role modeling. I just had an opportunity to work with senior women in a bank just right before the pandemic, and they wanted to. We were called in, my colleague and I, by HR because they wanted us to fix the senior women. Fix the senior women. There's something. These women, nobody likes working for them, and we can fix them. So we ran some focus groups with more junior women, and we went with the senior women. And the senior women all said, "Oh, we really support younger women. We value supporting younger women. We're committed to that." They said that almost every one of them. Then when we interviewed the younger women, they said, "Oh, those senior women. They're so competitive. They compete with each other. They compete with us. We can't trust them. They're awful." And so when we
Wow.
fed that data back to the senior women, here's how the junior women see you, they were like, what? And so they didn't see themselves that way,
Yeah.
but that was how the junior women were seeing them, because the system was setting them up like this, that they were not supporting each other. And so, but it hadn't occurred to them that that was something that they could do or should do. So anyway.
Right. So speaking of systems and organizations, what are some of the best practices that you would recommend that organizations can take in order to facilitate and make these environments more helpful for women who are trying to lead and grow?
Well, I actually think that both your Power Self program and you in your consulting practice do these things, right? Which is that you have to make people aware of these dynamics and the statistics. I mean, very often organizations don't even stop to look at whether or not there's a gender pay gap.
Right.
They don't stop to look at what's happening in their industry in terms of, where the women are, how the women are all stuck at the bottom in the middle. They don't see it, so I think if you can make the dynamics clear, and then you can give the women a chance to also create so women need to understand this too, right? Because otherwise we just see things as interpersonal, right? We don't see that we're part of a larger dynamic. Then I think the women can develop a vision of how they want to support each other. And then they have some container to hold them the way they want to be, that can be a counterbalance to the pressures to compete against each other.
Okay.
And I just want to say there's a lot of work too around being politically savvy, and women can support each other in two very specific ways that come to my mind. One is the idea, you said banding together and having influence so we can be allies for each other. So if you're promoting something, I can get on your bandwagon and I can give my own experience and story and point of view and perspective about that. And another way of thinking about this is amplifying.
Right.
So a woman's voice can get lost, right? I mean, either we say something and it, it's like we never said anything, and then a man comes back later and says it and it's brilliant. And, we all know that. One of my clients calls that a he-peat. And then, this idea of how do we get our voice in the room? Well, if we can amplify for one another, you say something and I don't just let it go. I want to support Wendy on that. It is my experience as well. And I think it's important for everyone at this table to understand what Wendy and I are saying. Right. So now you're not alone. Right. You've got a partner and an ally in that. And I'm amplifying whatever point it is you're going to make. And I think those are some choice things that we can do, but we've got to be clear on the front end, and we've got to ask for that kind of support from other women as well.
That's where I think the vision can come in, right? Yes. Whether you call it vision or norms or whatever it is, it's like what are things we're going to commit to in terms of how we support each other. We're going to amplify each other's voices. I love the stories about the women in Obama's White House.
That's right. That's where I learned the term to begin with and the concept. Because they, even at that high level, were getting shut down. Even though they were the mouthpiece of that administration, and yet it changed the game when they began to amplify and support one another in different ways.
So let's talk about gossip at work.
Oh, that's a good one. That's the juicy part.
That's the juicy part.
Yes.
All right. So this is another finding that came out of my research. Gossip came up over and over and over again when I asked the women to demonstrate typical interactions between women in the workplace. And I got really, really frustrated about it. But it came up. I would ask about it. But something then began to emerge about how it wasn't really clear how people felt about it. So there was an argument that actually broke out in one of the small group sessions, where the argument was about gossip. Like, gossip is good, gossip is bad. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. There was this argument that came out. So I asked about it in the follow-up interviews. Tell me about this argument about gossip. How do you feel about gossip? And it was the same kind of muddy response. Well, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. And but women always do it. Women do it, and it's bad. I think women do it. It's bad, and women are bad because women do it. And it became this whole like self-flagellation thing, right? Like, oh, gossip's bad. Women do it. Women are bad.
Bad me.
Oh yeah, it was awful. And I thought, and then other people would say, no, it's not. It's not bad. It's not bad. So then I realized, okay, I tell me about gossip. Tell me about an example, and I dug into it, and I realized that okay, there's actually a whole range of talk that we do as women about other people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's a whole range of talk, but we only have one word for it, which is gossip. And it has this very negative load on it, right? Very negative. Gossip is bad. Men do it too, by the way, but they don't get, it doesn't get called gossip when they do it.
Right.
But in any case, so there's a whole range of talk we do, but we only had the one word, gossip, and I realized that actually some of the talk that we do about other people is not bad. Some of it is. It's mean. It's intended to be hurtful, but some of it's not. You know, it's intended to be supportive. And so I realized the intention here is what's important. So I recently had a conversation with a friend about another woman who is ill, and the conversation was, how can we support her?
Right.
You know, shall we organize some food to come to her at night? Should we organize rides to the doctor? I mean, the intention was to support her. We were talking about her, but it wasn't mean. So I realized, okay, we need to expand the language here and have more language so that we can make a choice about what we're doing, because we really need to stop the mean stuff.
Okay. And so what did you come up with?
I came up with a new word, which is what every researcher hopes for, right?
New word, new concept.
New concept, new word. I call it trans-knitting.
Oh.
It's the transfer of information
Exactly.
for the purpose of connecting people for a positive purpose, right? For the purpose of support.
Yes.
And so then as soon as that came up and I started to talk about it, my friends and I would be in a conversation, and the conversation would go something like this. Oh, I want to tell you about, oh, wait a minute, let me think. Is this gossip or transmitting? Oh, I think it's gossip. Never mind.
Never mind.
I'm not going to go there.
But that consciousness and that awareness is wonderful.
Yeah. It is, but and you got to, because it's so
you have to
automatic.
stop.
Yeah, you got to stop and ask myself, okay, what am I about to do here? So that's a skill, right? And so that is something that came that I think has been very helpful to me.
Well, we've talked about choices in some of our previous podcasts, and this idea of when I get to that moment, I have a choice point.
I have a choice point.
And if I don't have respectful, trust-building intentions, then I just need to keep it to myself.
Yes, because we've made an agreement. It's part of our agreement about in our friendship is that we're not going to gossip.
Right.
The mean stuff. We're not going to do that mean stuff.
Yeah.
So if we've been clear about that with each other, right, our friendship rule is we're not going to gossip, then we can help each other too, because I might say to you, okay, is this gossip or is it true? Because it's automatic. Otherwise, it's just... Yeah.
And I want to go back to one of your first rules that you talked about, the importance of being loyal and trustworthy. And when we talk about the trust work, one of the behaviors of trust is speaking with good purpose, right? And serving mutual intentions. And to me, those go hand in hand with this, because again, gossip is the opposite of speaking with good purpose.
Right.
And I have to figure out what is it that's going on with me that is prompting me to do this, because I think we need to hold up that mirror as well, because that then helps us get clear about our intentions and what's driving some of our own behavior. It's not just about everybody else talking about me. I don't want to talk about other people.
I'm doing it too, right? So
That's
it's like,
right.
it's not,
Yeah.
So we got to stop the cycle.
Yes.
Yes, and we have to help
I love
each other
the stop the
sometimes.
cycle part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about only dynamics and what other ways that women are keeping themselves from reaching their full potential.
Well, I do think that this was going on for a lot of the women who came to Power of Self, right?
Yes.
The ones who come in and say, "Oh, I'm in a room full of women. I'm not comfortable with this." There a lot of women. I mean, really, a lot of women. Between 20 and 40% of women in technology jobs or in senior level positions are onlys, meaning they are often or always the only woman in the room. And that has a really huge impact on a person's self-confidence over time, right? You begin to doubt yourself because people are treating you like you're not there. And so the very idea of saying, well, women really need the support of other women if they're going to be able to deal with these situations it's revolutionary to when you say it in a group of onlys, right? It's like, well, there are no other women here. Who am I supposed to talk to? So
Exactly.
to be intentional about creating women's support groups, which is what happened out of POS, right? Is the women would come in and they'd develop trusting connections with other women.
Well, and there's several things I want to say about that. One of the worst things you can do to a woman is isolate us, right? So separate us because we're relationship by nature, so to speak, at least the majority, bell-shaped curve research. So to isolate us is hard on us.
Yes.
But if you look at the only phenomena, by being the only, we are isolated because we aren't like the other people in the room. And so even though we're in a room full of other people, we're still isolated.
Right.
And then what the other point I make to the women in the program is here are 29 other women in a class of 30 people that you've come to know, love, and trust over this period of the program. And you now know, love, and trust these women, which then encourages you to go know, love, and trust other women beyond this group. And they're like, but we're special. I mean, it's like this group of women.
Don't mess up the tribe.
This group of women.
Nobody else on the island.
And I want to say, I could have 29 other women in here. And because of what we're learning about ourselves and about our relationships is what enables you to build the container of trust. And so once you've had that experience of working with other women, and I just think that has become so foundational to us supporting beyond the programs and the books and the coaching and the various other things. If it can happen with the three of us, it can happen with 3 other people or 7 other people or 12 other people. And it gives me the want to go do that and the skills and the language to go do that.
Absolutely.
Which I've always really loved about the Power Self program because you point that out to them, and you sign all of your correspondence, women supporting women. I mean, it's like to really reinforce that women need the support of other women, and we can support each other. And I don't know how many times in coaching over the 20 years, I've said to a person I'm coaching who's in a current program, that's something you could reach out to the larger POS network about and ask for help, and they say, really? I say, all of the POS alumni are committed to each other.
Group, the community.
It's a community. And they go, really? So, I mean, that's a huge thing that you've built.
Well, and because in their companies, I mean, I've never worked for a woman because there were no women in leadership roles. And I think we've been so familiar with the only scenarios that it doesn't even dawn on us to do that without some prompt.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So, Dr. Ann, tell us the story of Isabel.
So, Isabel is just a classic example of the only dynamic. She was a coaching client just about a year ago, and she she had just lost all of her confidence. She'd been, it was sad. She came into our coaching work saying, I don't really think I'm a leader. I don't really think I have what it takes.
Oh, goodness.
So the story was she had been a senior executive in a large NGO, international organization, but she was the only woman in the senior leadership team. So this is what could happen, right? She's the only woman, and a vacancy opened up on the senior team, and she advocated for promoting another woman in the organization who she felt was, very talented and quite ready. And the rest of the team, which were all men, were against that idea and wanted to hire a man from outside. And she decided she was going to the mat over this. And so she went to her boss's boss, because her boss was part of the group that was saying, no, let's hire this man from outside. She went to her boss's boss and advocated for this woman to be promoted, and he agreed with her.
Good for her.
Good.
Yeah, that's what I said. Good for her. So she got this woman promoted. Well, her performance review was very, very bad in the next round, in which her boss said to her, gave her very bad ratings. He said she discriminated against men and that she was not a team player.
Oh, yeah. So she paid a price.
She left the organization. She felt so devastated and so I mean, and so unsupported, right? Not only did she not get a good rating, she got, really a terrible performance review. And she thought, I can't stay here. So she left. But then this self-doubt came down on her, and which she felt like it must have been her fault. This is what we do to each other, ourselves as well, right? It must have been my fault. There's something wrong with me. I'm not a good leader. And she thought, I'll never be a leader again. I mean, she was really in a terrible shape. And so that's what can happen to onlys, right? Yeah.
And I can't believe this is still happening today.
Yes. I mean, this is a really recent
decades
story.
of us fighting for these.
And that's what I find is that some women say, well, this isn't relevant anymore. This doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
And I just want to say, what cave
Where
are you living in?
Right.
It's in the newspaper every day. I mean, as we're taping this, the Olympics are going on. The summer of 2021 Olympics are going on. And, the women pushing back on skimpy uniforms that they have to wear to play beach volleyball or do floor routines and gymnastics. I mean, all of those things are alive. They're well. They're kicking. They're and yet it's taking the courage of some of these women's teams to say no more. I'm not doing it.
Right.
There was some women's team, I think from Denmark in the European Federation Sports League, who ended up having to pay a fine because they didn't wear bikinis while they played handball. And while the men got to wear fully clothed, uniforms. And I encourage all of our listeners out there to pay attention, to read the headlines, because that's one of the things that women coming out of the program say, and I hope that women out of reading the book come to find out, is that you begin to notice things you never noticed before. Oh, that's a gender issue. Oh, that's misogyny. Oh, that's, gossip. Oh, that's because it is everywhere if we're paying attention to it. And when we can pay attention to it, become aware of it, understand it, we then have a choice point of what we're going to do with that.
Yeah. Right. So gender dynamics in organizations. Let's now talk about, I'm seeing the title of this is Top 8 Things We Know. Let's move on to that in the notes.
All right.
Because these are powerful statistics.
Well, these are some of the statistics when I said earlier that, and I have to be able to look at my papers to see this. But when I said there are statistics that organizations need to be aware of, that women need to be aware of, that have to do with gender dynamics that usually people are not aware of. And so they think, oh, it's just me, it's just you, it's just here, so there are these bigger picture things that create a context. So
7 things
Seven top things we know, right. The gender pay gap persists. And it has not changed in about 20 years.
Yeah.
So white women working full-time earn 79 cents, somewhere between 79 and 81 cents for every dollar that a man makes doing the same work. That hasn't changed. But one of the things that is also shocking, but not as obvious because it's not talked about as much, is that that's for white women. Black women make 62 cents on the dollar. Native American women make 57%, Latinas 54 cents on the dollar for the same work as a white man. So these are things that when you take a look at it,
and I want the audience to know that these numbers are March 2020.
Yes.
So there we go.
Yeah. This is very, very current. And people just aren't aware of it. Even in this bank that I was telling you about, where I did the work with the senior women, the organization, because organizations don't, had never done an analysis of the pay gaps by gender, let alone by gender and race. Okay.
And I want to say we teach to this very specifically about compensation, promotions, titles. Don't take on more responsibility. Here's what I would need to say yes. I mean, we hit this one hard for this very reason.
Yes, right, because otherwise nobody's paying attention.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. You have to fight for yourself. There's research that came out. There's a lot of things that I always wondered, is this an urban myth? Like that women say something and then and nobody responds, and then a man says the same thing, and then everybody says, "Oh, great idea." I always wondered, is that an urban myth? I mean, we all talk
Yeah.
about it all the time,
Yeah.
but there's research now.
Wow.
It's not my research, but it's good research, and I think that when you put research out in front of people and
Yes.
you say this is a solid study, and it shows that this is really happening. So another one of those is interruptions. Women get interrupted more in meetings. There's research now showing, yes, indeed, women get interrupted more in meetings. Important to be able to see the numbers and show it in the workplace. These are studies. Women, I love this. Women get evaluated more when women get a negative performance evaluation, anything negative in their performance evaluation. 76% of the time, it's about personal characteristics.
Oh my gosh.
You don't smile enough. It's a very common one.
Yes, it is.
You are too abrasive,
Mhm.
right? And for men, when they get a negative performance evaluation, it's only about personal characteristics 2% of the time, compared to 76% of the time for women. That's like such a huge study
Yeah.
that it's not something that's just someone's imagination. It's really, really, really true. Huge study by Fortune magazine, or Fortune, Snyder and Fortune. Women get this is a very positive one. Women, this is a repeat study done in 2019. Thousands of people involved. Women get evaluated higher than men on 17 out of 19 leadership characteristics, but we don't get the jobs or the money.
That's crazy.
That is the crazy part of it. Because I've seen, you see a study, and of course, when something like that comes out, the first study that produces it or distributes it is like, oh, that can't be true. And,
Right.
and let me give
It's
you
one
these 14.
study.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they do another study and it shows it again. And then they do another study. And this one has had multiple cuts and takes and
Yes.
Okay.
It's the thousands of people participating.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
So, very interesting. So at least there's something positive here. Then there are some other ones. I think the most recent one, this last one, is that during the pandemic in the U.S., we all know this at this point, I think, 70% of working women say they are fully or mostly responsible for the housework, childcare, and homeschooling, and are more likely to lose a job, sometimes because their children are present when they work remotely. This has been really hard on women.
Yes,
and it's just revealed this gender split in terms of who's responsible for the childcare, the home. When both the mother and the father are working, it's the woman who does, and her career suffers.
She has 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
She works as many hours at work as men do, and she goes home and does another full-time job. Again, like you say, there's lots of research and stats on all of that. And here's what I think is fascinating, though, again, going on around what's going on right now. This is true. And for those companies who are not offering more flexibility in the work from home benefit, if you will, and that it's becoming one of the premier benefits and differentiating benefits, is that you could let me go because there were people lined up behind me waiting to take the job. That is not the case in today's world.
That's right.
Yep.
And so it's an employees. I want our listeners to hear this. It is an employees market right now.
Right now it is.
And it's been an employer's market for a very long time. And I've seen it go both ways I've been working for a long time. And so I'm glad it's coming back.
Yeah.
Because I think there's power in numbers and power in it's the supply and demand.
Exactly.
And the supply is not there and the demand is.
Right.
So whether it be livable wages, whether it be being paid fairly, commensurate with gender counterparts. I think all of that. I want to see what unfolds over the next several years because I think there's some opportunity to really make up some lost ground.
And there's opportunity for organizations to take the lead on changing what it means to be at work for both men and women.
Yes.
And so not only remote work and being able to manage and work from home so that, during that 15 minutes in between calls, someone can go and change the washer to the dryer.
Absolutely.
And then also on the other side of that, I read a study or an article earlier this week about a lot of companies considering going to 4-day work weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is becoming a huge incentive for people to go to work at some certain companies because they are considering instituting these 4-day work weeks in order to better meet the needs of families. And also, especially since most people are still working from home and they're not just sitting down at 8 and getting up at 5.
Right. And if you can, you can measure the productivity of people. I don't care what work you do. And this view of if I can't see you working, you're not working.
Right.
And so I've just heard too many people say, just because you come to the office doesn't mean you're working.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so it's not about whether I see you working. It's, are you producing whatever I'm asking you to produce as a part of your job responsibilities?
Right. Well,
but they're also going to have to, though. These companies are all organizations are going to have to do something about childcare.
Yes.
About affordable, high quality childcare being available. If they're going to have, even if you're working remotely from home, you can't do it full time and be taking care of the children full time. So.
Well, and when you couple that with how many child cares no longer exist because of what's happened with the pandemic.
Right.
Again, a supply and demand situation. The demand is higher than the supply. So companies may find that it's a differentiation in a competitive way to attract the best people in the market.
Yep.
So, Anne,
let's hope so.
I want to give you, Dr. Ann, the opportunity to talk about, your research and this whole conversation has been so compelling. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, how can people connect with you, get in touch with you, read your blog, buy your books?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I do have a passion for research, and not only mine, but all of the research that's coming out because of what we've been talking about. Now, I care about staying up with it because it's important for people to be up to date. So I do publish a blog every Monday on gender issues in the workplace, and I try to keep up with the research. So I try to summarize for my readers what's the latest research having to do with gender dynamics in the workplace. And so that's every Monday, and you can find it on you could go to my website at www.annelitwin.com. And
ANNELITWIN.com.
Thank you. And click on the blog, and it's there every Monday. There's a new one with summarizing some new research, and so I think that's the best way.
And I want to say too, you post on LinkedIn as well, so you're on LinkedIn. And what I love about it is in a bite-sized chunk, right? So it takes 2 to 3 minutes to read it.
Yeah.
And in the spirit of when we know better, we do better, you're helping us know better with the research that you offer. And if you're trying to influence or sell some new ideas into your organization, she's got some great stats that can help you.
There you go.
Well, a lot of times in the end of the blog, I'll say, now, if you're trying to get your organization to change their policy on X, give them this blog.
Yes.
Because the business case is here.
That's right.
For this change.
Yes.
So,
right. That's wonderful. And the title of your book is?
New Rules for Women, Revolutionizing the Way Women Work Together.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great read.
Yes. So I know you've been a part of Marsha's and the Power of Self world from the very beginning. How are you feeling about all of this expansion and new things that we're doing?
I think it's great.
It's okay. I love it.
It's really it's exciting. It's thrilling. It's wonderful for me to see you, Marsha, go to the next phase. Right?
Yeah.
I think for all of us, when Power of Self as a public program came to an end, it felt. I know I was very sad, and I know that a lot of people felt like, this is the end of something, but it isn't. No. I can see that it is now just you're on to the next phase and creating more wonderful work in a different form.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled for you, and I'm delighted to be able to be here.
We'll be partners for life.
Awesome.
We are partners for life.
I love it.
In the sense of really supporting each other's work because it's very aligned. And Anne too has worked all over the world. She goes to countries where they take your passport and don't give it back to you till you leave, which is more courageous than I am.
Yes. So, Marsha, do you want to go through this? We have a short summary of a lot of things that Anne has done.
So reverse mentoring, training of sponsors and sponsorees on how to make the most of their roles, use of coaching, including strength-based coaching and structured coaching, inclusive talent management. Putting more people into that pipeline that's look like us,
Right.
That's right.
you know, the conscious decision making, which we've talked a lot about the intentionality and choices, and that's right in the heart of all of that. And then standing up and articulating our strengths, our brand, our vision, and what we want in the world. And we don't have to just say what we don't want.
And I want to say that this is not my work. These are actually best practices that I gathered.
Okay.
How to do women's leadership development,
Okay.
of which your program was in the heart of. So a lot of these are things that you did.
Yeah, they are.
You do.
Yes.
Right.
And you do too.
Well, I do them too, but I also, but I wanted to also, I included you, and this is a different research study, and I included you and your program in it because you had so many innovations, and so a lot of these are things that you created.
Yeah,
which wanted to
and
give
I
credit.
just want to offer these to our listeners because they'll show up in your work, they'll show up
Yeah.
in my work, and these are possibilities for every woman, every organization, every leader to adopt,
Right.
and do that in support of putting the best people into leadership roles.
Yes.
Because that's
Yes.
really, it's not discriminating against men.
Right.
It is about how do we ensure that we've got the representation of the best thinking, and we need more voices and more
Exactly.
experiences and more perspectives in that, and these things can help with that.
Absolutely. Well, I know we've just scratched the surface today, but Dr. Ann Litwin, it was an honor, a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, and Wendy, thank you as always
Of
for
course.
being our hostess with the mostest, and you know, it wouldn't have been done until you were a part of this. So I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that you flew in today to be with us in person so that we can talk about some really important things. And I think when I look at your work, my work, and our work, because I think when we do it all together, we can move mountains, right?
Mhm.
And so I do appreciate you and all that
Mm.
you're doing. And we've now known each other. We go back even further. So 99 was when
That's
I
it.
started the master's program. So
Okay.
way back when. So 23 years and counting. And let's keep doing good work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all, listeners, viewers, for joining us today on this, Your Authentic Path to Powerful Leadership podcast. Please download, subscribe, go to MarshaClarkandAssociates.com for all the information on the tools that we referenced here today, Marsha's book, Embracing Your Power. Follow us on social media. You can reach out to us via email. You can connect with us on digital. So.
Well, and thank you all for making us a part of your day, as they say. And I do appreciate our listeners, and we do want to hear from you because this is the continuous learning process. Things change. One of the things that you and I have both seen, there's a lot more research about women these days, which is why you can put out a blog every Monday. Because in my early days, 20 plus years ago, one book a year came out about women, right? And we all ran to buy it and read about it. So we want to hear from you because it is important for us to stay current and stay relevant because that helps us help you. And we all love the learning part of that and incorporating it into our work. So thank you. Come see us on our next podcast. And here's to women supporting women.
Yes.